happy Friday afternoon, everybody, for anybody that's on the Eastern time zone, and wherever else you are in the world, happy whatever time it is for you. But it is a crazy time, as you know, we're all experiencing, and I don't know if anyone noticed, but we do have an election coming up soon. We've been doing this series just essentially as a way to learn. It was a 3-part series. Well, the first was on climate candidates and how to assess what makes a good climate candidate. And we had a great panel and discussion there. And then the second part was around actually meeting some candidates so we could get a sense of some real climate candidates in action in key races, and that was an awesome discussion as well. And this is the final stop where we talk about what we can actually do now that we have a better sense, hopefully, of what makes a good climate candidate, a sense of the landscape. You know, for those that are inclined, what can we actually do to mobilize? And so we have a great panel again today with some diverse perspectives, ranging from people that are, you know, in the trenches building these organizations to people who, you know, came in without a lot of experience and are trying to figure out how to get mobilized and have been able to get pretty mobilized in the last couple of months. So with that, Eliza, do you want to maybe just introduce yourself and then we can quickly go around and introduce the panelists?
Sure, let's do that. Yeah, I'm Eliza. I was excited to put this series together when I joined the MCJ community, which was a while ago. I realized I was in a community of people looking around for big levers on climate action, and it was definitely important not to leave elections out of the conversation. So here we are, we're not leaving it out. And it's really interesting, I'll go into it, but in the context of putting this series together, realized there maybe aren't enough places for people to plug in, and created Climate Changemakers, which I will tell you about, another place to plug in, and we work with a ton of partners that I'll talk about too. So I'll kick it to Audrey.
Thank you. Really happy to be here and talk to all of you. So I'm a co-chair on Clean Energy for Biden, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Also on the Grassroots Growth team. And then in the energy sphere, been working in energy for more than 15 years, some time in residential, commercial, industrial customers, as well as on the policy side of the Public Utilities Commission and the Department of Energy.
Great. Hi, y'all. My name is Caroline Spears. I'm the founder of Climate Cabinet. We work with Climate Cabinet Action Fund. We work with state legislature campaigns mostly to help candidates run, win, and legislate on the climate crisis. And I'm happy to be here.
Cody?
Yeah, hey everybody, I'm Cody Sims. So I'm maybe the newbie that Jason was referring to. I had done literally nothing in politics my entire life until about 3 or 4 months ago when I think I DM'd Jason and said, hey, are there anybody doing anything around the election in the My Climate Journey community? And he put me in touch with Audrey, and I reconnected with Eliza as well. And so anyway, my day job is with Techstars, totally unrelated. I work in venture capital, but what I've been doing with a huge chunk of my time is both co-founding Climate Changemakers with Eliza and am running the Startups Affinity team in Clean Energy for Biden, including having done a Biden fundraiser a few weeks ago.
Nice. And so, Eliza, do you want to kick things off and talk a bit about Climate Changemakers and the work that you're doing?
Sure, let's do that. So I'm going to share screen. Oh, can you make me a co-host too, Jason?
I can.
Cool. No privileges yet.
I can also just.
I think Audrey, you might need to do it.
Perfect.
Yeah, I think you need to do it, Audrey, since I already made you the host instead of me. Sorry.
So yeah, does it work now, Eliza?
Yeah, do you see this? Are we seeing? You see the slide? Yep, cool. So basically, in the context of putting together this MCJ series on using elections as a big lever on climate action, a lot of people started coming to me, Cody included, and like, cool, you convinced us. Elections are a big lever on climate action. And you've convinced us that the Senate is super important. It sounds like, you know, moving the Senate over to a pro-climate action majority is something that will kind of be instrumental in advancing climate action. Where do we plug in? And so I started thinking like, wow, what's the action side of all of this? And at the same time, we were watching Clean Energy for Biden spin up and be enormously successful in just being a climate flavored way, clean energy climate flavored way for people to plug in and help out in the presidential race, but there wasn't an equivalent for the Senate. So Cody and I and Kristen and a few others started building. And we realized like people are time constrained. What if people start with an hour a week and we give them a place to plug in and we partner with everyone doing really important stuff and we create a action-oriented community. Oopsie. So the mission really is to activate people and give them a place to plug in. We were very Senate focused this cycle. We're building something to outlive this cycle. And it's really like a community driven thing. So if someone, you know, came in and said, let's organize for this other candidate, all they have to do is raise their hand and say, I'm gonna lead that team and I'll find 10 people, and then boom, they're organized for a new candidate. If someone came in and said, I want to organize for a Republican and said, I'm going to lead that team, I'm going to find 10 people, boom. I mean, this is really a platform. And again, it's the idea is to be nonpartisan, to look at the elections through a climate lens and to take action to elevate leaders who are going to lead on this issue. This is what the Senate map looks like. You know, in addition to the Biden-Trump being a very important race between someone who will champion climate action and a denier, there are a lot of senators up for re-election. You can see in purple in the states where the incumbents are up for re-election, and the numbers correlate with their LCV score, which is a score given by the League of Conservation Voters, which quantifies their environmental votes. These are all very bad scores. Makes very clear sense to replace all of these incumbent senators with climate champions. So that's been the focus. Just because that really does feel like the biggest lever on climate action after the presidency, which Audrey and her friends are taking her team are taking care of. So climate change makers, we're organizing on Slack very much like we do here. People enter the community and they join a team. Teams are pinned to candidates, to Senate candidates in this case. And again, anyone can spin up a team as long as they want to lead it, and they can find 10 people to help them organize for any climate candidate. And each team meets together via Zoom for an hour a week for collective action. The idea is to foster community. The idea is to really create habit out of action. We're like, how do we turn civic engagement from feeling like a chore to being like your sport, and you do it in community with others and you keep coming back. And of course, taking collective action allows you to punch way above your weight and have a very outsized impact. And the camaraderie keeps people coming back, so that there's that kind of trying to turn civic engagement into your sport, into a habit. How are we different? We're activating new people. This is really exciting. So about half of our members are new to political action. So sure enough, people were looking for a place to plug in that was climate flavored. I think Clean Energy for Biden demonstrated that beautifully. It's not like there aren't other places to plug in. There are lots of them. I'm going to show you our partners, and I encourage you to plug in with any of our partners or us. The entire point is to plug in. But again, we've created a space for people to plug in where at least half or around half of them were not plugged in. So we're doing kind of like the traditional stuff, the phone banking, the text banking. We're also in very much the MCJ spirit. So I should have said, like, this is all so MCJ inspired, just the level of like the collaborative spirit and the level of ambition. We're inventing new ideas in terms, in terms of getting the word out for getting the vote out really and elevating candidates. We're leveraging our networks and our professional skills, which is a little bit of a different twist than if you just join any other Oregon Start phone banking. We're really a community, and and people are contributing. Again, I said members select them, and we're holding each other accountable. So here are our partners. I'm just going to breeze through it really fast, but I mean, the idea is, again, there are a lot of places to plug in. So if you're already plugged in, great. If you want to plug in more than one place, great. If you want to plug in with our community too, great. Next Gen America does an amazing job getting out the vote, particularly with young voters. Vote Forward has an awesome program. It's a spinoff from Swing Left. They're writing letters. I'm pretty sure Audrey is partnering with Clean Energy for Biden, has a lot of the same partners. Power to the Polls, registering poll workers, a necessity this election. Young, able-bodied people who are less likely to have severe impacts from COVID to staff the polls. We're partnering with them. Climate Power, they're doing really important advocacy work and take a lot of credit for getting a climate question into the debates. Give Green, sending candidate contributions through Give Green to stamp the money as climate concerned. Flip the West is doing an amazing job phone banking for various candidates, more in the western half of the US. Reclaim Our Vote, vote.org, Environmental Voter Project, and Caroline will talk about her incredible work at Climate Cabinet. But really, like, the point is, there are a lot of places to plug in somewhere, plug in with any of these folks. If you want like a potpourri experience where it's kind of community driven, plug in with us at Climate Changemakers. Yeah, these are just some things that we've heard people in the community say. It's really taken off. We've seen exponential growth. We just started like 7 weeks ago and we're up to 400 community members, which is pretty exciting. The hour a week is really resonating, and the emphasis on productive action is really resonating. Like, show up for an hour, you can come in cold, we're gonna be productive, and then you move along with your week. Yeah, and you know where to find me. You can DM me if you wanna learn more or go to our website. I'm gonna kick it over to Audrey, who was a huge part of the inspiration with spinning up Clean Energy for Biden.
Thank you, Eliza. All right, let me try to present here. How's that? You see my slides? Great, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been great working with Eliza and Caroline and Cody on this. So I'm a co-chair, as I said before, and on the grassroots growth team at Clean Energy for Biden, 32 days to go. So really proud of what we've accomplished in Clean Energy for Biden. We've raised, I think it's 2.5 million now, raised for the campaign. Clean Energy for Biden is, it's informal in a way. It's a group of 9,000 volunteers from the clean energy community that have just gotten together to help Biden and Harris win the election. And so everything that we raise just goes straight to the campaign. So all that 2.5 million. We've had more than 60 fundraising and get out the vote events. I really encourage you to just go to our website, sign up. There's as Eliza said, there's sort of a range of how much you want to participate to fit your schedule. I think what's really unique about Clean Energy for Biden, and I think Eliza kind of talked about this a little bit as well, when I was looking to get involved, there's a lot of fundraisers and there's contributing dollars, and I'm not the wealthiest person, so I can do that to a certain extent, but I wanted to do more. But we're also all very advanced in our professional careers, and I didn't want to just make copies of brochures and put them in the mail. And so how do you leverage this great energy and clean energy and climate community and really utilize all the different skill sets they have? And so we built this organization. So the blue boxes are kind of just the org chart, basically, of the different parts of the team and really putting people to work. And we have 8,000 members, but we probably have hundreds, 500 active volunteers who are weekly active on our Slack channel, contributing, people like Cody, to this effort. And so how do you organize these people? How do you delegate? How do you give them responsibility and ownership in this process? So for example, setting up a lot of the operational pieces and logistics people so that they have the support, so that each volunteer doesn't have to do all these other little jobs like create the social media posts and the graphics and the CRM management, right? There's people who are very skilled at doing that. And so really delegating and assigning people to their strengths, I think was a big piece of it. Tech support, gamification, making room for new ideas, because it's a very special election, especially during COVID. How do we utilize people to the maximum, and how do we come up with new ideas? And so like new ideas for events, right? People get burned out with just the regular fundraiser where you have an elected official giving a speech. So we have, I think recently we had oh, I can't remember the cute tagline, but it's basically work out and do phone banking. So there was like I don't know, it's like a yoga muscle building, workout session, or phone banking bingo, or texting bingo, happy hours. I'm trying to organize like an improv entertainment while phone banking. And then, there's also the policy paper part of it. So there's a lot of policy experts, and how do you kind of bring a very massive industry now in the clean energy industry together. So there's something for everyone in here, I guess. So we have more than 31 teams. You can see all the different state teams. So it's really important to have a national structure, but also a regional, state, local structure. And then kind of matrixing that together with the different industry and affinity groups that we have, and that we have our own separate teams and have the independence to go and do and run it the way you want, but then you also have the centralized support, but then you're also intersecting with all the with other teams and other groups of people to maximize your leverage. And then my last slide. So as Eliza said, I think it's really important to, when you're creating a volunteer organization, figure out like, how do you meet people where they're at? So, if you have a minute, right now, pull out your phone, text CE for B to 30330, which is the Biden campaign, and you can get plugged in there. I think it's important to show the campaign, how important the clean energy industry is, how big that industry is, how much it cares, and how much how big of a role it should play in the Biden policy platform and what his administration seeks to accomplish. Have 5 minutes, ask 3 friends or colleagues to sign up and join, post on social media, to help us spread the word. When I reach out to people are like, oh, thank you for contacting me. I was wondering how I could get involved. And so, being proactive is you never know, like your teams, your friends may want to be involved, they just don't know how. Have 20 minutes. We have something called Project 2 Degrees, which leverages the Vote Joe app. So phone banking, people on the voter rolls, people you don't know is very important, but also what can be very effective is contacting the people you do know. The people in your address book, and this peer-to-peer relational texting can be very effective, because these are your friends and your family and your colleagues, and they trust you. They want to hear from you. So this link will take you to kind of instructions, but you just go to the App Store on your phone, download the Vote Joe app, and what it does, and you can see on the top right, this picture, what it does is it looks at your address book on your phone and then compares it to the voter rolls, and then you can filter for all your contacts who's in a battleground state, who didn't vote in the last election and could use a reminder to check their registration and make sure they vote. And then it's all that data is stored locally on your phone, so your contacts, your friends' contact information does not go to the campaign at all. So it's quite secure that way. And my personal experience with that, I texted my friends, and some of them said, hey, thank you for the reminder, I was meaning to check, or I want to get involved, and I tell them about the Vote Joe app and they get to use it. So really expanding that circle of influence is very important. Have 1 to 2 hours. It's easy to hop into a phone bank, as Eliza said. So we have one for every day of the week, multiple ones any day of the week, in different states and different battleground states. And these phone banks, a lot of time are for the whole Democratic slate. And so when you're calling, you're helping both, the Senate candidates, as well as local House and Senate candidates as well. And then, we'd love to have you as a volunteer in Clean Energy for Biden. So when you sign up on our website, you can sign up for the minimum of getting our newsletters and staying informed, or you can sign up to be an active volunteer, get into our Slack space, and help us organize and bring your ideas and bring your skills. And then as Eliza said, power the polls. If you're available on Election Day, I just got my training for San Francisco County to be a poll worker, so I'm going to do that this weekend, look through that training. If you're a lawyer or a lawyer, tell them to join our election protection team. So the Biden campaign has built up a team if you can travel to a state to help monitor the polling place.
Whoops. I think Audrey froze. Should we have Caroline go while we wait for Audrey to come back, maybe?
Let's do it. It's 2020, so we'll play everything by ear.
Yeah.
Great. And when Audrey rejoins us, we can flip back. It's cool. Awesome. Hi, y'all. I'm Caroline. I'm the director of Climate Cabinet Action Fund. We are an organization that helps candidates, particularly those at the state legislature level, run, win, and legislate on climate change. And so we've heard about the Senate and we've heard about Biden. There are great ways to get involved with both of those. I would highly recommend those organizations. I'm here to talk about the least sexy of them all, which is state legislature campaigns. So why these are so important to solving climate change and why they're also incredibly high value for this election cycle. So first, state legislature campaigns, critically unimportant, chronically under-resourced. So state legislatures, when I think about solving climate change, state legislatures control our energy mix. They control how much, do you get clean energy on your grid? Like Virginia passed its 100% clean energy bill last year. Or is your state bailing out the coal companies like Ohio's state legislature did, which is actually currently the subject of a federal investigation. State legislature campaigns can control percent of coal, clean energy, and solar on the grid, how many solar jobs are built in your community or wind jobs are built in your state. They control natural disaster funding. So the federal government will distribute natural disaster funding. States determine where it goes. Does it go to historically privileged communities, or does it go to communities that have historically been marginalized and under-resourced? A great example of this, after Hurricane Harvey, someone did a fabulous analysis of where the federal dollars went. The state agency gets to determine where it goes. Two neighborhoods in the Houston area, side by side. One, a wealthier neighborhood, majority white, one majority minority neighborhood. Per capita for affected, flooded resident, the majority white community got $64,000 in federal money. The majority minority community got $84 per affected resident. So that's how important state legislatures are. They're important for solving the climate crisis. They're also important that we make sure we adapt to the impacts of climate change in a way that's equitable, in a way that doesn't, what we're already seeing is climate change and COVID, there's a very similar pattern exacerbating existing inequalities and resources. And that's why state legislators matter. So, and yet, despite this, they are chronically under-resourced. The average state legislator makes $24,000 a year and has 1 to 2 staff members who are in charge of tackling everything from healthcare to climate change. So that's why we're focused on state legislators. And so what does this mean so we've talked about what state legislators mean for climate. What does it mean for this election? We could have come out with a hot take on it. Instead, we dove into the data. We took the 10 battleground states this year and we analyzed every single state legislator record battleground states. So that's 10 states. It's 1,600 state legislators. That's about 10,667 votes that they took on every major piece of climate or environmental legislation just last session. That's how many votes they're taking on a climate and environmental vote just last session. That's just in the past 2 years. And he said, what does this mean for where we should put our action? And we found a very strange, we found some strange things from this experience. We found a bunch of folks hanging out in vulnerable seats. You would think, like I thought before we did this analysis, like say you're a vulnerable state incumbent, you're gonna moderate your votes. Maybe you wanna appeal to the middle, etc. Turns out that doesn't happen. So what we have is folks like Anthony Rodriguez, Florida's House District 118. Anthony, our friend Anthony from Florida, has a 0% climate score from last session, which literally means that Anthony took, out of all the environmental votes and climate votes that he could have had the opportunity to vote on, he voted anti-climate, anti-environment on every single one. And I would see that and I would think, okay, maybe Anthony's in a very, a district that is maybe a little bit more conservative, doesn't view this as a priority. No, Anthony lives in a district that Hillary Clinton won 0.5 percentage points. So there's examples of like this all throughout the United States. We took this and it looks like I cut out too. I cut out as well. Oh, fabulous. Okay, good. My computer's just slow today. So okay, we have Anthony. Anthony's in a district that Hillary Clinton by 12.5 percentage points. And these represents high opportunities for climate change. What we're clearly seeing here is two things. One, there's down ballot drop off. People will vote for the top of the ticket, and then they're kind of switching their vote or not voting at all, bottom of the ticket. And as we said before, that has massive impacts for state levels and our ability to solve some of these big issues. It also means the second thing, in addition to down ballot drop off, it means that these are opportunities for the climate movement to get involved. Like where I see Anthony and I think, we could put some money into that race and flip that race from anti-climate to pro-climate. And so what we did is we analyzed these 10,000 votes and we came up with a list of the top 40 highest ROI climate investments this cycle. These are races that are down ballot. Your state legislature race in Arizona, $50,000. Joe Biden's race, $3 billion. So it's so important. We have to win the presidency this year. State legislators provide a very high ROI opportunity to really make sure that while we're flipping the presidency, we're also flipping some of these state legislators as well, so state legislatures as well. So if you want to learn more, I'm going to drop some links in the chat. You can go to our website at climatecabinetaction.org to see the list of the top 40 state legislators. We are hosting an event on Tuesday if you want to. Right now, we are fundraising for these top 40 highly vulnerable, highly climate impactful candidates. So if you want to get involved in some of this phone banking, some of this volunteering, really boots on the ground, I would highly recommend talking to Eliza or Audrey. I will link our event on Tuesday. We're going to hear from Sister District about the importance of down ballot. We're hearing what Jigger Shaw is going to talk about the importance of state legislators in building the clean energy economy. And Data for Progress is going to talk about the polling, kind of like handicap, how the race is doing. So that's our opportunities to get involved. That's what I would say exists. I just dropped the Eventbrite link in the chat. You can also find us on we've posted that on our Twitter, climate_AF, which and then only belatedly realized that people could interpret that as something different from climate. So I'm also gonna, if you're curious about some of this research that we did, I'm gonna drop a chat. I'm gonna drop this link in the chat we've like really gone in these state legislators and figured out how to maximize. And if you want to download all the data yourself and see what you come up with, definitely look at it. I see Nishant on this call who wrote this. So I want to give a huge credit to Nishant, who based on his years of 20 years of experience in data analysis and marketing, created this incredible landscape of how to affect change at the state legislature level. So I will drop his analysis in the chat right now. Thanks, y'all.
Great, and I froze earlier, so Cody said I could finish up if you guys don't mind, and we can also talk about any questions if that's helpful. So if it's okay, I'm not sure where I froze exactly, but the Vote Joe app is really great, so I recommend kind of downloading that and then syncing your contacts with the voter rolls, and so reaching out to your friends. Oops. Let's see. Phone banks. We have phone banks every day of the week, multiple times each day. So it's easy to drop in for one and a half hours, make some calls in battleground states, really important. And then we'd love to have you join as an active volunteer in Clean Energy for Biden, get invited to our Slack space, and we will, put you to effective use. And then poll worker, Power the Polls. I think Eliza talked about that. I signed up to be a poll worker, so I just got my training from San Francisco County to show up on election day and work there. And then if you know a lawyer or you are one, we have the Biden campaign has an election protection team. And so this is either going to a state and helping at the polls or signing up for a national hotline to help voters in case they run into any trouble. As we know, we're very afraid of what could happen with this election, and making sure people are able to vote. And then if you have some money to spare, we still have a lot of fundraisers, events going on, so we'd love to have you participate there. And I can throw some of these links, and I'll share these slides with everyone. So thank you for letting me wrap up. Cody, you want to go next?
Sure, fantastic. Well, I thought in the spirit of my climate journey here, I would give a little bit of my elections journey. So as I mentioned, I came into this with no background in anything politics at all. And I'd always, been interested in it, but I'd never actually done anything. I'd never phone banked, I'd never text banked, I'd never done a fundraiser. I'd given a little bit of money here and there in the past, in the hundreds of dollars range, probably over my lifetime. But I realized this cycle that it was time to do more. And I realized I wanted to lean in and learn more. So I did a few things. The biggest thing I learned is just do it, right? Just go do it, take action. I mentioned at the beginning, I kicked off a DM to Jason. Hey, is there anything going on in MCJ about Biden? And he said, oh, you should talk to Audrey. So I DM'd Audrey, and she just sent me a link to the sign up thing for clean energy for Biden. This was probably in, I don't know, May or June. And, I signed in, I got invited to the Slack. There were maybe like 800 people in the Slack at that point. So like still, a lot of people, but, and they're, I didn't really even know what to do. I got into the Slack, I started reading some of the channels, and I think I put in the intros channel, like, hey, I work in the startup community. Is anybody doing anything to activate the startup community? And there was a little bit of like, oh, that would be a good idea. Oh, that would be cool. I work in the startup too. And Audrey DM'd me and she said, just launch a channel called Affinity Startup and people will join it. Today, there are 120 people in that channel, and we threw a fundraiser 3 weeks ago and raised over $25,000 and for the Biden campaign, and had over 200 participants join our fundraiser event. And the second half of the fundraiser event focused on GOTV. And the event itself didn't have any politicians there. It was VCs talking about how clean energy policy will affect innovation in the coming years. So it was actually interesting content for startups to want to join. And that's one of the messages, is just do it. Like, figure out a way that you think your interest will resonate with others, and go figure out a way to make that happen. Same with Climate Changemakers. Eliza and Stu and Parker were doing this series with MCJ. I thought that was interesting. Eliza, I had a meeting with her. She got in my ear that, hey, Senate matters, right? Like, regardless of what happens at the top of the presidential ticket, hopefully Biden wins. We're going to do everything we can to make sure that happens. But if we don't flip the Senate, we're going to get totally constipated actually trying to push policy through. And so leaning into how to take care of the Senate also, was something I thought, I wonder if I could figure out how to do that. We were at first talking about doing just little fundraisers here and there, and realized that actually when it comes to the Senate in particular, it's about mass mobilization, because you need really to get people to support lots of different candidates. And we kind of created this whole gamification concept of different teams that are supporting different candidates, and sort of taking action on a regular basis together. So this notion of collective action, and it has started working. So lessons I've learned, I'm going to just be very quick and share a few things. One is hand raisers are out there. So as soon as I started that clean energy, or the Affinity Startup channel in Clean Energy for Biden, I posted a little message like, hey, would anyone want to get together and chat about what this might even be? And like 4 or 5 people wrote back. We scheduled time on the calendar. And, I think I was saying, I don't know that I have time. I've never done a fundraiser. I don't have time to do it. And one of the people on there, Jolene Gurovich, who's also an MCJer, said, hey, I'll help you do it. Let's figure it out. I've never done it either. And, we started doing it. Next thing you knew, we were meeting twice a week as a stand-up, and planned this whole event. And it sort of took on a life of its own. Same with an MCJ, or with my climate journey. With Climate Changemakers, I had a random call with Kristen Winsent, who is an MCJer, about how do we increase marketing and storytelling around climate. And I said, hey, you should come join a meeting that we're doing with Kristen and Stu and Parker about some of the stuff we're thinking about. And she joined and has now created literally the most badass sort of volunteer marketing team I've ever seen, better marketing team than any company I've ever worked in, to be honest. And the brand work, the copywriting work, everything that's happening are just hand raisers. We have people who are at the top of their industry game, helping us build materials around my climate journey. And it's because people care. Beyond industry experts, reaching out to your personal networks, pulling in people like my sister and my mother-in-law, who I was helping to learn how to do phone banking in Kansas earlier this week, who've never done anything politically before, but they want to help because they care that you're doing something. And your passion pulls people in as well. So what I learned is there's a nexus between your passion and people who care about climate. And if you hit any of those camps, they're going to want to help you out in some way, shape, or form. And when you pull people in your, people who care about you in, you're actually also pulling more people into the climate movement, which is also really awesome. So a few other just really basic things. I learned the same thing about fundraising. Like in my mind, fundraising is so icky. I don't want to ask people for money. But if you're asking people at the intersection of people who care about you or people who care about the climate, they're excited to help. They just didn't know where to do it. And they're excited to do it in a way that they know is directly relevant to someone or something they care about, as opposed to just randomly going to Act Blue or some other site and giving money. So those combinations mattered a lot. And then finally, the last thing I would say is that not everything has to be partisan. So, you know, Audrey and Eliza both mentioned Power the Polls. I've also volunteered for Power the Polls. So I'm, you know, gonna on November 3rd go work the polls and try to help out there. There's things like letter writing campaigns through Vote Forward that, you know, you're just writing nonpartisan letters encouraging people to vote. I get my kids to like draw and color on those letters and make them exciting and appeal to voters that, or appeal to citizens that they should go vote. And things like that draw out, draw voters out and actually get them to show up to the polls, which matters, right? So the big thing is like giving people avenues to turn their concern into action, and creating ways to make it a regular habit for people are really important as well. So, you know, hence like hours of action and, you know, the kind of weekly phone banking activities that CE4B is doing and things like that, like really matter. So put it on your calendar and just make it a habit to show up every week. Some weeks you're gonna be like, oh God, I don't want to phone bank today. But 10 minutes into it, you're energized and you're excited and you're talking to voters. So anyway, that's been my elections journey over the last 3 months or so. And I couldn't be more energized and fired up and thankful to, you know, the people who pulled me in here, Audrey and Eliza and Jason and Caroline. And it's just been, you know, I can't wait to see where we go from here. And I think with that, we're going to panel, right, Jason?
Yeah, so first of all, I mean, I know everyone's in a different place, but personally, I probably look more like you did, Cody, you know, several months ago, where I've been increasingly getting politically active, but from a place that wasn't very politically active. And one thing that I wrestle with is just that it seems like in order to make a difference, it is such hand-to-hand combat where it's like a zillion micro tasks in order to try to move the big beast. And so this is just a general question for any of you that want to take a stab at this, but what are your strategies or advice to measure progress in this kind of world? And how can you look at it in a way that that doesn't drive you insane in terms of just kind of putting work and dollars into a seeming black hole that just will take as much as you give it, but without like the kind of the dopamine hit that comes from more instant gratification? Anyone want to take a stab?
Yeah, I think for me, just it's people. Like through this process, I've met so many people in the clean energy community, and so for me, that's just qualitatively subjectively what gives me more hope is that we've become more organized and stronger in this process as a community, and so we've made a lot of gains there. And then I think just, you know, tidbits here, like when we started out, I was like, hey, let's start a team in Georgia. I know some people, and people are like, Georgia, that, you know, not worthwhile. And now Georgia's like in play. So like there's these little indicators as well. But just to see people kind of step up, like, you know, Cody and the team that he's formed, like that just gives me a lot of promise for our industry and our industry being stronger.
And I will say, you know, from a KPI perspective, Jason, the thing that we have been paying attention to, like, honestly, there's no way any of us can ever know how much the work we did actually affected outcomes, like how much it actually affected votes. That's really hard to tie back. But what we can track is action, right? How much action did everyone take? And then there are studies on different types of actions and how generally effective they are at driving voter turnout or at driving, you know, vote work, right? So, you know, we know that, Eliza, you're gonna know these stats better than I do, or Audrey, you may, or Caroline, that, you know, phone banking is, you know, the canvassing is the top action you can take in terms of driving voter turnout, but canvassing's hard right now because of COVID. You know, that's actually knocking door to door. phone banking is second. Letter writing is really high up there. Texting is a little bit lower down the list, but it's easier to do. So there's sort of different things. So what we're tracking is how much actual impact are people taking and what action are they taking on a weekly basis, and trying to track that and see that that's actually growing.
If anyone's curious, there's a fabulous book called Get Out the Vote by Green and Gerber. And if you've ever been on a phone bank and you're like, why am I doing this? Read this book. It's not too long. It'll go through the effectiveness of everything and demonstrate. And it shows like literally hours per vote. How many hours do you put in to get one vote? It goes through all of that, which is fabulous.
I'd add just a couple things. One is like, you get a lot of voicemails, you get some pissed off people, but like you actually get some real voters, and some of them are actually on the fence, and some of them are like a grandpa farmer who has 8 kids who you actually really just had a legitimate conversation with, and he didn't know about Teresa Greenfield, and he loves everything you told him. I mean, you have those moments. So there's that. There's like the human to human thing. The other thing is it's really scale. So, I mean, that's the whole thing with collective action. The first time I had a phone banking party at my house a couple of years ago, I was like, well, I'm never phone banking alone again. I got to always grab friends and do that, because then we made 8 times the number of calls. So at Climate Changemakers, we just keep scaling the number of people making calls, which is, scaling the number of voters you're reaching. The other thing I feel is very impactful is the number of people we're bringing in. I'm sure Clean Energy for Biden's doing the same. I don't know if you guys measure it. The number of people entering our community who have never taken political action before. It's just a very clear indication that we're activating people to action, like to productive action, who wouldn't have been participating productively otherwise. And then the other thing I'll say is, for all of its ickiness, fundraising is so concrete. And that's kind of why I got hooked on it really early. It's like, you can do an event for a senator, raise, 50 grand, and like, that's, no one can take that away. That's 50 grand. I mean, they need to raise X, and you raise some percentage of that. I mean, it's very, very tangible. I would also say particularly to people in this community, like, a lot of the kind of fundraising credit I get doesn't have to do with me giving money or even bundling money. It has to do with introductions that I make. So like very early on in the Senate cycle, Cal Cunningham came to San Francisco. I took him out for Thai food with like 8 people who are very, very active organizers. That very casual Thai lunch resulted in, I can't even tell you. I mean, the campaign's still calling me, telling me how much money came from events that were seeded because people fell in love with him super early in the cycle over Thai food in San Francisco. So, I mean, we all have spheres of influence, and in making introductions is a very, 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 very high impact way. I mean, really just like, did you know there's this awesome climate candidate running for Senate in North Carolina against Tom Tillis, who's like on the environment, and just that kind of stuff. People don't necessarily know. A lot of really savvy people aren't paying attention. Or don't realize that they can get involved in a Senate race that's not on their ballot and that kind of thing. So that's part of the, I think, really incredible impact of raising much needed funds, as gross as it all is, and as much as we hope that we can get the money out with the next round of leadership. That's the game that's being played right now. So that's the pitch for fundraising and the impact.
If I could just add one more thing. If you step back and look at Biden's climate platform, like I've been working in this area for 15 years. Like it's very ambitious. It's very progressive. You look at where he started and where we've gotten, and look at how much play climate got in the debates. Like never has that happened before. And so that to me is a lot of progress in this country. And it's not just Biden. It's really this grassroots movement on climate that's very exciting.
And that wasn't an accident. The climate question in the debate was a result of very, very coordinated advocacy on behalf of an amazing coalition of climate orgs spearheaded by Climate Power. So advocacy works.
And for those of us that are climate concerned, but maybe not as experienced, I mean, it counts as a step just to make time on a Friday afternoon to sit on this call and learn. But there's so many organizations out there doing great work, and several of them are represented here. And then you had a slide that showed this whole list of logos of organizations that, and I'm sure that's just the tip of the iceberg. So for a new person coming in, what advice do you have on how to figure out where's the right place to anchor for you?
I mean, what I really like about what Climate Changemakers and Clean Energy for Biden have done is create a community to get started. Looking around to find the perfect group from the outside is never a possible, it's because you don't know what it is until you get in there. So just start these communities, starting with a community-based organization, a community-centered organization, and using that as a way to take an hour a week of action or meet. And then from that, I meet the most interesting people in all of those organizations. Like, it's so fun. And just start with something, even if you're like, I don't know if I'm interested in creating fact sheets. Like, go create some fact sheets. It's going to take you a few hours. You're going to meet a bunch of cool people, and they're going to give you a bunch of ideas on where you can go next.
Anyone else have anything to add, or should I ask another question?
Yeah, I just caution that it's a two-way street. Like, if you, for example, want to get into clean energy for Biden, I will help orient you. I'll plug you in and tell you where to go. But we're all also volunteers, right? So you gotta raise your hand and jump in there, and don't be shy. Don't feel like you can't contribute because you've never done this before. You just got to jump in and, hey, put yourself out there. These are my skills. This is what I can do. Someone tell me like where you can put me. So you have to put yourself out there as well.
You have to just put yourself out there. That's the right answer. And try a couple different things. Like, try phone banking for an hour. Like, it sounds really scary. And the first 2 calls I made, I was like, oh my God, I'm talking to a live random person in Iowa. Like, this is super scary. What if they yell at me and tell me Trump is so great? And then, you talk to them for a little bit. And most of the phone banking, by the way, the lists are focused. They're like, today you're going to call 65-plus-year-old Democratic leaning voters who don't vote frequently. Right. And so, like, what you're getting into. So just like jump in, dive in, give it a try. I find it super energizing to talk to voters and connect with them over things. I remember talking to one voter in Iowa who had just had power out for 6 days because of the derecho floods that they had in Iowa. And so we got to commiserate over climate change and extreme weather patterns, which was amazing. Right. But try phone banking, try some text banking, try some letter writing, and doing it through CE4B, who has a ton of stuff going on, is great. Doing it through Climate Changemakers, who has a ton of stuff going on, is great. Or going to any of those orgs directly is great. It doesn't matter. Just do it and put it on your calendar and try it for an hour.
Yeah, and I would say one of the reasons that we built Climate Changemakers is to like taste all of this stuff, right? You can like every week we do a different action. The other thing I would say is that part of the barrier to political engagement is the partisan nature of it, right? And we all know that climate shouldn't be partisan, science shouldn't be partisan. That's all completely stupid. And yet there aren't like a ton of super intentional efforts to like literally just stop with that narrative and start talking about elections through a climate lens and just use the words Democrat and Republican as little as humanly possible. So that's part of what we're trying to do at Climate Changemakers, inspired in large part by this community. Right? And it's just like the whole, like, we are tunnel vision here, climate progress. Let's all hold hands and find our common ground and like kick the ball forward. So,
and if you're turned off by Washington in general, which is fine, and you don't want to do presidential and you don't want to do Senate, like, do some work with Caroline and climate and climate cabinet and get down in the trenches of state and local politics, right? Where you're, 2 or 3 votes make a difference in like whether something major actually happens or not.
The Virginia House of Delegates, every time I call someone, they're like, 1 vote doesn't matter. I'm like, let me tell you about the Virginia House of Delegates in 2018. Literally, the votes were tied on the seat that decided party controlled the Virginia State House. Like that, it was tied. They literally flipped a coin. This is in 2016. They flipped a coin to determine who was in control of the entire Virginia State House because the votes were tied. So like when you're phone banking, you're gonna pick up like a vote every like hour and a half you do it. That's the Virginia House. And in 2018, and in 2016, the anti-climate person won. So no climate progress. In 2018, we got pro-climate people in there. Virginia passes 100% clean energy bill. So it's like, really, you put an hour of phone banking, that's the type of returns that you can see. It's awesome.
Caroline, you also make a really important point. Like, that's a Virginia House, but like, come on, we've all been paying attention the last few election cycles. Like, every race is so darn close. Are you kidding me? Not like every race, but come on, these margins are bonkers. Like, it's so bonkers. Like 51-49, like, come on. So if we lived in a country where the margins were like super like generous and whatever, yeah, maybe you'd feel like your efforts mean less. But like when we're looking at like 49.5% of the vote versus like our efforts mean a lot. I feel like in that environment, it just gives you that much more like clarity about how worthwhile these efforts are.
Another big aha I've had is I live in California. I live in Los Angeles. And so, you know, I've always felt like, like whatever I do isn't gonna make a difference. Like we all know how California loves clean energy. Like we're good. And it was really talking to Eliza and Caroline, who were like, you live in California, but that doesn't mean you can't take action on Kansas, or you can't take action on Maine, or you can't take action on North Carolina. And, you know, that was a huge aha. The other big aha I had is that when you give or when you promote people to give money, if you're doing that, do it through Give Green, because Give Green actually marks any dollar that you or people you attract to give money to a candidate as being from climate concerned people, right? So Act Blue is great and wonderful, and it raises money for, you know, I mean, if assuming you're voting for a Democratic candidate, because that's what you're doing right now if you care about climate, probably. But Give Green actually points the money right now toward those candidates, but marked as being, this is from people who care about climate in terms of where the money's coming from.
I completely agree with that. I would say one note about California. California is doing great progress. It took California 3 years to pass the re-up of its climate bill. Passed a bill in 2006, awesome, AB 32, got a bunch of stuff done. It kept getting shot down in the California Assembly, the like redo, the like next version of the California climate bill. So I'd also say, yeah, if you're in California, you can definitely have a lot of impact elsewhere, but there's a lot of work that needs to be done in California too. So yeah. So you can help in so many ways, in every place. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say, we have time for 1 or 2 questions from the audience. So if anyone has any burning questions, either raise your hand or just fire away.
So just really quickly, thank you guys. I appreciate it. I was involved back in the day with the Obama for America group and doing that volunteering, and it kind of petered out after the election. I think that was one of the things that everyone really regretted. And obviously all of our efforts right now need to be focused on the election, which is like 1 month away. But I think it would be great to at least have in the back of our minds, you know, or day after election, like really focus on keeping this group together and keeping the energy up. And, you know, there's not going to be presidential, but again, that there probably will be some runoffs. There'll be like lots of state houses. There'll be some special elections and then beyond. So I would love to see us try to keep the movement together, keep the energy up. And, you know, obviously I'd love to help with that, but I don't know if you guys have anything to say about that, or you have thoughts, or you just wanted to throw that out there as something that was important. And I would love to not have that happen again.
We're right there with you. Cody, you
Yeah.
want to
Yeah, happy to weigh in from Climate Changemakers. And Caroline, you probably, I mean, Audrey, I don't know what the CE4B plans are. And Caroline, you may want to talk about Climate Cabinet. Climate Changemakers, we were building this thing for the long term, right? So we have people right now, like the way we view it is what we're building is a social network around climate, and a social network that takes action around climate. It's not a political action group. It is a social network that takes action around climate. And so the action we're taking right now is focused on the 2020 election. Actions we may take in the future may focus on keeping corporations accountable to their climate pledges. It may focus on holding the media accountable to how they're talking about climate publicly. It may take accountability on what's happening locally in Montana or Iowa as it pertains to, you know, climate developments. So we're 100% in this for the long term, building an action-oriented community to hold the levers of power accountable to taking positive climate action.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Love
I
it.
would say from the climate cabinet perspective, we run off of a database of district-specific climate impact solutions, voting records, and political vulnerability for every state legislature and congressional district in the country. So based on that, we're trying to create more products with that. So the first thing, two things should always be true. One, you should know how all of your electeds voted on climate legislation at all times. You should always be able to go to one place, look it up, figure it out. So we're doing that. That should exist at the Senate and House level. It should exist at the county level and the state legislature level and the city level. That's what we're building on slide 1. And then part 2, if you're a candidate or a policymaker, you should, some candidates are really connected into the climate community. That's awesome. A lot aren't. So if you're at the state legislature level, you should always know who to call when it comes to passing climate legislation. So those are the 2 things that we're working on next. And then, yeah, Audrey, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, no, this is an active piece of discussion for us at the Leadership on Clean Energy for Biden. But I think some of the ideas, one example is the Clean Tech Party. So they organized in California for Hillary, and then they've continued, and I know you guys have worked with them. And so we've created all these state teams in Clean Energy for Biden, and those could be, evolved towards those state actions that you three are working on. I think but even just in the near term with the new administration and the transition, there will be policy advocacy. There will be helping identify leaders in the new administration, and making sure that we're putting forward the best leaders in there. And I think there's like, look what we've done in just a few months, and there's so much more to be done. And for me personally, I still feel like the network we've organized is very white collar, but clean energy jobs are so important, and it is, much more blue collar, and that's what's really going to push the country towards action on climate change. And so, what more can we do to expand the community for clean energy and climate change to include more people just beyond our own network? So there's just a ton of more work to be done there.
Well, and
Green
one
collar,
comment
green collar jobs, by
Yes,
the way, Audrey.
awesome.
That's the phrase we need to be pushing, green collar jobs. Go ahead, Sam, sorry.
Yeah, no, all good. So one comment there, from a not panelist, building on that, is just thinking about climate changemakers having 400 plus people right now, thinking about Clean Energy for Biden having 8,000 people. And right now, all of that awareness is spread across the country in all of these different places. But imagine if there's something coming up now, like imagine if there's another Standing Rock, or if there's another situation which requires urgent attention. Now you can mobilize 10,000 people who already have the experience towards a specific issue, or if there's a policy thing. But now we're not talking about electing hundreds of candidates and reaching, millions of voters. We're talking about flipping like 2 or 3 votes in the Senate, maybe. Hopefully that work is already done. So just from kind of an outside or like a community member perspective, it will be amazing to be able to focus that many eyeballs towards singular issues at moments in time.
I think technology also plays, we're using Slack. We can, these tools are much more collaborative than, maybe during the Obama administration. Like we were able to use some of the memos that were written by Clean Tech for Obama to help us get started. And so the stuff will live on, and we have these tools. I'm always getting on teams like Cody's, like, document what you're doing so we can pass this on and share this. And so it continues to live.
Well, we are a little bit over time, but I feel like we could have easily taken another hour here. But I thank the panelists so much for coming. This is important work that you're doing. It's an important time. And to Joel's point, although Joel left, it's not just an important time between now and the election, but it's an important time to be building these muscles and getting better and better at deploying them over time. So speaking from an MCJ standpoint, really excited that you're doing this work, excited to have you as part of the community, and excited to be helpful however we can. So please keep us posted. And then to anybody listening, if you feel inspired, just make sure to reach out to any of the panelists and get involved.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, y'all.
Awesome. Thank you, Jason, for
everybody.
being at the core of so much inspiration. Seriously, you've been such a huge leader. And I think we're all kind of following your lead. It was just time to get moving and get real. And you showed us that.
Well, thanks so much. And I can point to countless examples within the community of people that you could very much say that about. This is such a tremendous problem that it takes a village. And that's why I think one of the cool things about the climate world is just how collaborative it is, because there's no running the table. There's no like I'm trying to win versus you. It's like we're all rowing in the same direction.
Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
well,
Thanks,
have a
guys.
great
Take
weekend,
care.
everybody, and let's keep this discussion going and keep up the amazing work.
You too. Bye, everyone.